Welcome to the Eat Better, Move Better, Live Better podcast presented by Flourish with Tracy, where we'll dive into the realms of holistic wellness, plant-based nutrition, yoga, and self-care to help you live your best life. Tune in every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern for our special segments. Meditation Monday, start your week with mindfulness. Wellness Wednesdays, get the midweek boost you need. Sadhana Saturdays, dedicate weekends to personal growth. Join us as we explore and discuss all things to eat better, move better, and live better. Welcome. We often say things like, I need to change, or I want to change. Today, I'd like to talk about the process of slowing down what we sometimes call change. It actually begins much earlier. It begins not with change, but it begins with shift. A shift in our awareness, perspective, attention. A shift in how we relate to any given experience. A shift in what we believe what may be possible. Shift happens long before there's any visible evidence that change has occurred. The power of shift, moving from awareness to transformation. What do we mean when we say shift? A shift is an inner movement from one position, perspective, or way of responding toward another. Doesn't necessarily mean that anything changes. And it doesn't mean that you immediately become something different. And it also doesn't mean that anything requires immediate attention. Shift is simply noticing and seeing something different. Instead of believing this is just the way I am, embracing a shift to suddenly realize maybe this is a pattern that I've learned. That difference in perspective and nuance is a shift. The external circumstances around any given situation has not changed, at least not yet. What is different is your relationship. Noticing. That's the shift. And that's all that matters. And it's important to realize that shift is not the same as change. It's the important distinction between the two. Change often refers to something becoming different. Behavioral change, a change in habit, a circumstance. A shift happens before any of those things occur. A shift is often the movement that creates the change. For example, if you were moving in a particular direction and you tap into awareness and decide to shift, you're going to do that before you actually change the direction in which you are going. Small internal movements alter the direction of what comes next. That is shift. It's important to use the word shift in the proper manner because the word shift matters. Shifting, or the use of the word shift, offers an alternative possibility. For example, if we say, I need to change myself, we're saying that something's wrong. and that we need to fix it. Instead of saying that, we can use the word shift by asking, what would I like to shift? So it changes the perspective, and you can ask, what pattern am I noticing? Instead of how do I get rid of this, we may ask, how might I relate to this differently? Using the word shift in our thought process allows us to approach ourselves with curiosity instead of condemnation. It allows you to honor where you are while you move to where you wish to be. That is the beginning. That is awareness. Shift often begins with awareness. But before you can even shift, you have to notice it. The noticing is not the same as judging. Noticing is just simply being aware. It is the statement, this is happening. And from that simple statement, you receive information. And information provides you something to work with. You can then use that information to identify patterns, to identify choices, to notice, and then take the time to embrace your observations without immediately needing or trying to fix or correct or solve. You do not have to immediately change or transform the moment you are aware of it. It's just simply noticing. For example, I notice I become anxious when I don't know what's going to happen. I notice I tend to rush when I feel behind. I notice I criticize myself when I make a mistake. We then can use what we've noticed to shift our perspective. And we can ask, what support would help me handle this differently? What is this experience showing me? What am I learning? What is this feeling asking me to notice? The circumstances are all the same, but your perspective has shifted because you became aware. And when you are aware, you are now placing attention. And attention is one of the ways we get to participate in our own experience. The more curious we are, the more questions we can ask. The more questions we ask can change what we actually notice. And the more things we notice, the more patterns we see, and the more things we can look for that can shift what influences us within any of our situations. Not about changing the circumstance, but just shifting our relationship with it. As with anything, the more we practice, the more at ease and comfortable and better we are with this tool in practice. Here's an example. Look at the difference between these two statements. I'm going to fail versus I'm noticing the thought that I'm going to fail. When you make the second statement, you create distance. It doesn't deny that you thought you were going to fail. It just simply shifts your relationship with the thought. You then become the observer of the thought rather than automatically becoming the thought. That is how you practice shifting. You can also practice shifting your relationships with your emotions. Instead of, I need to stop feeling this way. Perhaps you can embrace, I can experience this feeling without allowing it to make every decision for me. And what this means is you can feel anger without becoming angry, or that you can feel fear without assuming that the fear will not allow you to move forward. That is shift from controlling every internal experience to developing a different relationship with how you experience or what you experience. And all of this allows you to shift from being reactionary to being responsive, from resisting to accepting. And acceptance doesn't mean that you are okay with whatever the situation may be. Acceptance simply means I acknowledge that this is what is happening right now. It allows you an opportunity to respond instead of react. They work hand in hand. Responding means making a decision with thought, seeking support, setting a boundary, resting. It doesn't eliminate action. It just allows you to be more intentional. And all of this allows you to shift how you see yourself, your identity. We often carry identities that were formed from old experiences, but we know that you've made shifts all along the way. You can then observe yourself and notice, I have practiced this pattern. I have learned this response. I'm learning and practicing something different now. It doesn't mean the old pattern isn't real. All you're doing is recognizing that the pattern is not a permanent definition that defines who you are. It allows you to continue to be curious even if you don't know quite yet the answer, that you know the current state is not where you wish to be. All you do is just ask questions, notice, observe, and begin to shift. What was I feeling? What did I need? What was I trying to avoid or protect? What can I try next time? What triggered? These are healthy questions you can ask, and take the time to learn, to shift from fixing to understanding and observing and learn. What would I like to practice instead? What is one small shift I can make today? This moves us from the idea that something's broken. It moves us towards the idea that we are continually adapting and learning. Learning allows room for growth and mistakes. When you shift, you don't require any validation from anything that is external. And that's important. When we make an internal shift, sometimes we expect the outside world to immediately confirm it. And that just may not happen. For example, you may shift towards stopping any reaction to criticism. And yet, externally, criticism may still come. Shifting does not change the external world. Shifting provides an opportunity for your relationship with the external world to be different. And that matters. It helps you move from control to influence. not external influence either. Because we often want to control outcomes, and there's so many things we cannot control. We can't control other people's behaviors or their opinion. We can't control unexpected circumstances, the past or our future. However, when we shift to influence, we then embrace who we are, influencing ourselves, how we respond, where we place our attention, what we practice, our boundaries that we establish, what support we seek, and what direction we choose to move in. Shifting from how do I control to what can I influence. And when we do that, we move from perfection-based views to directional-based views, where we get to ask ourselves, am I moving in the direction I wish to go? Noticing that you now have more choices than you used to. Also noticing that you can't erase the past. And all you say is, I'm ready to explore something different. This happened. This developed. And I'm now ready to explore something different. That is a compassionate shift. And when you shift with compassion, you give yourself more choice. Before you thought about shift or observation or making different decisions, you thought of stimulus and an automatic reaction. Now, with shifting and noticing and choices, you can move towards stimulus, awareness, taking a pause to reflect and ask questions and notice, and then make a choice, and then make a response. It's always giving yourself the opportunity to recognize that you have other options. And this is when shift becomes transformation. When you begin to internally influence your choices. You notice something, you ask questions, and you see it differently, and you make different choices. And you practice that choice. And then you repeat it again. And then you realize your directions are beginning to also look different. And it is the repetition of that process of internal shift that begins the transformation. And that transformation begins to reflect externally. But it is only if you actually have a direction. When you shift, you need a direction in which to go. Shift isn't simply moving away from something. It's also that you're moving towards something. For example, if you say, I don't want to be stressed, you're moving away from being stressed. Where are you going? So the question would be, I don't want to be stressed. What do I want to experience instead? And then you can make the statement, I want more presence, healthier boundaries, more connection, more rest. Those are directions that you are shifting towards. So you're just not escaping or trying to get away from an old state. You're practicing moving towards the new state, what you are desiring. So practice, name the shift, You can practice by completing these statements. I want to practice. I understand. I notice. I would like to shift. I'm willing to begin with. My first small step is, congratulations, you've begun to shift. You don't have to solve everything right now, become a different person. Just simply identify a direction in which you wish to move. That's where transformation begins. Just simple awareness. That's the power of shift, where you can acknowledge where you are without deciding that you have to stay here. You don't have to reject anything. You don't need immediate evidence. And when this movement towards a new direction becomes something that you repeatedly practice, it influences how you live. And this is mental and internal. Next week, we're going to continue to look at shift. What happens when we repeatedly take note to move? What happens physically within our body, chemically or hormonally? What happens to our neural pathways, the messages we send to our brain? What's the science of what happens to our body when we learn how to shift? Please tune in. Thank you for sharing time and space today. Awareness creates possibility. Shift creates direction. Practice creates transformation. Transformation creates change. That is the power of shifting. Thanks for tuning in. I hope today's insights help you on a personal journey towards a healthier, happier life. Don't forget to join every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern for more self-care and holistic wellness tips. Before you go, make sure to comment, click the bell, like, and subscribe buttons for upcoming episode notifications. Be sure to always consult a medical professional before making any major changes regarding your health, diet, or routine. In the meanwhile, stay motivated, stay inspired, and remember, every step you take is one step closer to a better you. Until next time, keep flourishing, and as always, may all be well.